Welcome back to the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest on the podcast. The man, the myth, the legend himself. I have Dave Reed, one of the founders of Forked River in London, Ontario, which, if you've listened to the podcast, you probably know I brought up Forked River probably about 15 times already. So I thought, hey, might as well get the man himself on the podcast. So welcome to the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Phil. That was quite the intro. So,
yeah, well, give me a little bit about yourself, Dave. I always like to, hear from the person themselves, and you can kind of toot your own horn as much or as little as you'd like here. But give me an idea of, who is Dave Reed?
All right. Well, I think first I've got a beer. I'm sure you've got one there. So,
absolutely,
I'm going to be shamelessly plugging and sampling our Full City, which is backwards there, but Full City Coffee Porter. So,
and
kind of joke.
And
it's a
I have to give a shout out on the podcast because this will be on YouTube, but it's also going to be on the audio only version. So I have in my hand a Phil Bailey blonde ale. You can hopefully see it if you're watching on YouTube, and it gives you a reason to subscribe on YouTube as well, so you can see the beer. But I will be honest, Dave and the team at Forked River brewed this beer. I did not actually brew this beer myself, and it is where I get all my beer from my clients. So I appreciate you brewing this amazing tasting blonde ale, Dave.
Absolutely. Let's crack that open.
All right, we're cracking it open. Here we go.
I should have done that closer to the microphone. But there we go.
Maybe you can hear it. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
That's great. That'll
Cheers.
be good. Yeah. Cheers, Dave.
A little bit about me, I guess. Grew up just outside of London. Went to high school in London. Eventually did engineering at Western. So lots of London ties there, which is pretty cool. And then did engineering. Ended up moving over to Europe for a while, and then kind of getting a taste for. This was kind of like in the '90s, way back.
Wow, you're old, Dave.
I know. I feel old, so every day. But so like kind of there wasn't a whole lot of craft beer going on, and it definitely wasn't on my radar at the time. But moving overseas to England and Germany, and kind of seeing that hey, there's a lot of pretty cool beer out there. So I quickly learned how to use my engineering for good and not evil, and make beer. So that's kind of where I ran into Steve and Andrew. They're both PhDs and masters in microbiology at Western grads too. So again, more ties to London. And so kind of fell into it a little bit that way, working in engineering and then beverage R&D for a while, and then looking like there needed to be a brewery in London. So
nice.
Kind of just made it happen.
Yeah, so Dave, I know you're kind of I call you the OG of London craft brewing scene. So how long has Forked River been going for now?
We're just over 10 years now. June was our 10-year anniversary. Before that, it had been about 15 years since there was a previously operating craft brewery in London. So a pretty huge gap there. That was the Glatt Brothers down on Adelaide, down near Hamilton Road. Totally different industry. Like that was back when old man Reed in university in the 90s kind of thing. So, you didn't have Steam Whistle, you didn't have Mill Street. The aside from Labatt's and Molson, you had, Wellington, Great Lakes was around, Formosa, not a lot happening. So definitely a different time. And we actually, on our opening day, one of the John Glatt, who's his brother passed away, and that's why they shut the brewery down. He came for our opening, which is pretty cool because I remember buying beer from him in university, and to have him kind of pop by on his bike, which was pretty cool. So 10 years, and now looking like how many craft breweries, cafes, brew pubs are there running in the city now. So.
Yeah, I always say, the kids don't know how good they have it these days, because when I was at Western, which, obviously a little bit more recently, but it was interesting because I would go up to the bar and there'd be basically no craft beer available. Yeah. And if it was, it was the major brands that you hear about, obviously, and there just wasn't that option available. So you drink, what I consider generally bad non-local beer. Some of it, non-local beer, can be really good, but I like, if I can support local as much as possible, and that's been kind of a theme of our podcast here, Dave, is kind
Well,
of if
support
we
local.
can.
Put your money back in the neighborhood, and
Exactly, yeah, and
yeah, put
that's
it back in your community, because the small business that you support, that's putting their kids in soccer. That's helping put food on the table, or do families in your neighborhood. So
yeah, it's like
why wouldn't you do that? I mean,
yeah, I say that it's like you've never seen one of these large conglomerates support your kid's soccer team, right? It
yeah,
just isn't something
absolutely.
that happens, or your local event. And I'll give the plug to an event we actually have coming up in December 2nd. So we're going to be doing a really cool. I'm getting Santa himself actually to come to your
Second
brewery,
annual.
Dave. Santa Claus, yeah, and we're gonna get some photos there. So that's December 2nd. Everyone that listens to the podcast, you're more than welcome to come. But that's going to be in the afternoon, and you can just check out my kind of social media for that. But that's going to be at Forked River, so that's why I said, like, support local as much as possible. So, you started this craft brewery, obviously coming from a very engineering background. That's a pretty gigantic switch, I think, in some ways, but probably in other ways, I would say there's some things that we've talked about over the years that I think are probably similar skill sets in some ways, I think. What have you found to be kind of the most challenging? Like, if you go back 10 years ago, what were the challenges you were dealing with then, and what are the challenges you're kind of dealing with now, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, like, we had to file to get our licenses and stuff. We had to go down to City Hall and get a letter from them saying the zoning was appropriate, and they had to pull out the maps of Argyle and make sure it's not a dry neighborhood, which we found out it was up until like the 60s kind of thing. It seems ludicrous and crazy, but yeah, they had to pull these maps out and go, "Oh, it's okay. You can make beer in Argyle." I'm like, "I sure as heck hope so."
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Junction neighborhood in Toronto was dry into the 80s kind of thing. Like, you couldn't sell alcohol there. So there's some of these archaic uh, regulations and things, that a lot of it goes back to when Prohibition was disbanded, kind of thing. We're talking like 100, pushing 100 years here.
Wow.
That some of these laws and regulations, and even going to our insurance, and we needed to get an excise bond, and our insurance company's like, "What the hell is a bond?" Like, they had to go look up what this was, and because they've never done it before. So but yeah, we had people in City Hall like saying that you're crazy, other people saying you're crazy to open a brewery in Labatt's town, kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, it's look at what's happening like at the time in Toronto and Ottawa. That was kind of things were starting to really pick up speed even a year or so before us. But London's a pretty conservative town, but Londoners. There's a good quote from Steve Abrams, who founded Mill Street. When we opened, he made the comment that London's a tough town to crack. It wants to. It's a conservative market. It's a classic test market for other brands and businesses. But Londoners want to support London, and that kind of resonated. That I think Londoners really want somebody in London to succeed, not somebody from coming in from outside and taking the credit or taking business and stuff like that. So, and we see that, and we want to echo that as well. That we want to support London as a London business. So, like, it's awesome to see the support from bars and restaurants that we didn't know. Are they going to want to buy beer from some guy who shows up off the street saying he's going to make beer? So
Yeah.
yeah, a few of them did, which is great. And like part of our marketing plan, I went into the bungalow. They're like 11 and change years old. Went in and talked to the owner, just complete cold call, walk in, and
Wow.
like, "Would you like to buy beer from a brewery in London?" That was literally the pitch, kind of thing. And he's like, "Yes, we're the neighborhood hub. We need to buy products from," and he got it from our businesses in our neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
and they were like the second place for kegs to roll out to at the time. So,
Wow.
we've had beer on tap at that place for like one or two taps on for over 10 years, basically, constantly. So they support us, we support them.
That's
It's the same
awesome.
thing.
Yeah,
All
no,
of our
it's
other
funny.
awesome places too. That like we will
Yeah.
do whatever we can to support them.
Yeah, we were actually at Bungalow a couple weeks ago, and it's so cool to see, Forked River on tap there. And there was like, I think a couple actually, if I remember right, at least a few weeks ago, there was a couple, and I was like, that's awesome. Like, I can drink Forked River at anywhere, kind of in a lot of places in London,
Yeah.
and kind of still support that, and even places out kind of growing in that way. It's awesome to have that, and obviously holding true to that support local whenever we
Buy local. I
possibly
mean, it just makes
can.
sense. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a dollar spent in the neighborhood is a dollar back in the neighborhood kind of thing. It's not
Yeah.
getting piecemealed out to, South America, Europe, the States, Belgium, whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just keep it in, just keep churning it over. It helps everybody.
And
So,
so those are kind of some of the, earlier problems or maybe challenges
mhm.
you've run into. Is there
Yeah.
anything that's kind of more, more recent without getting too personal into your business, Dave? But, I'm curious about like, what are you guys thinking about right now, right? Is there things that you're thinking, how do we, grow? How do we, build more in the
Yeah.
tap room? Like, I'm always
A,
curious about
a
that, like
big
how that
push
kind of
has
works.
been, and kind of just pre-COVID, we were starting to pivot over that, it's competitive out there. There's lots. I mean, the craft breweries generally support each other. Like there's, all the places in London, and we help each other out as much as we can when we can. But it is still competitive. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so many taps. There's only so much shelf space at the LCBO, and that's been a big pinch lately. I would say is that the getting your LCBOs or the bigger stores. A lot of them get it. They're awesome people. But that shelf space for us and those sales are pivotal for us that we have certain quotas we have to meet to keep again, it's a business, to keep our listings in the LCBO. So we have to sell a certain amount of beer per store per period. So we kind of rely on those London stores to just knock it out of the park, that they're local, it's our home turf, to kind of
Yeah.
support those other stores outside of our market that maybe we're not as strong in, but we need to be in there to get it growing. So that's always a challenge because each store has its own challenges as well. There's a lot of things going on there, and the craft beer shelf space has definitely been pinched with ready to drinks and coolers and other stuff, and they're not giving up. And I get it; they're not giving up their hard liquor shelf space or their wine shelf space because that's bread and butter. So that's always a challenge, but that's we're in that business. That's the nature of the beast. It's one thing, but again, it's selling it. So we've pushed to like, let's have that, give the best experience we can with customers to just come out to the brewery and buy it. Come have it directly from us where we can play around with things. And I mean, there's 19 taps on there. We don't
Yeah.
have 19 beers in the liquor store. There's lots
Yeah.
of other choices to have there and stuff we can have fun with. And with food on site is huge, music, events. Santa's coming. How much better does it
Yeah.
get than that? So,
Exactly. We have
yeah,
actual Santa Claus. Like I was
Santa.
able to pull that one off for you,
Yeah.
Dave. I mean,
I
I'm
don't know how you
I'm
did
pretty
it, but I
happy.
mean, you must have some good pull up there at the
I
North
mean,
Pole.
also like he said, he would only go to Forked River. So I said, okay, well, I guess I have to, only do my event there for the next little while. And I think Santa
But
was
I think,
drinking a beer last year, so that was cool to see. So obviously, I mean, I always assumed Santa was a beer drinker, but
mhm,
you never know. You never know until you get there, and so it was good to see.
yeah,
Um, just kind of talking about the actual tap room that you have. I know I've done the big event we kind of did last year, which was really cool. We did something with Dad Club London there recently
mhm.
for a bingo, which you guys supported, which was awesome. Apparently I'm terrible at bingo. I did not win, but I think we raised like $1,000 or more
It's
there
over
that
$1,000
night.
in a
It was
night for a
crazy.
club. That's great.
Yeah, and then that money obviously goes to supporting Ronald McDonald House in London,
Mhm.
which is really cool as well, right? So, what about the tap room specifically? Like, I'm always curious about this from a brewery perspective, and maybe this is inside baseball for the podcast, but hey, I'm talking about London here. So,
Yeah.
the tap room, I think to me is super important because I live in London and I want to go to a tap room and have a beer and some great food, right? But is it kind of, I guess it's a bit of a balancing act between like, getting your beer into the LCBO, where people can buy it and take it home, and then obviously having a vibrant tap room. And I think
Mhm.
when I remember coming to Forked River before you expanded that tap room so drastically.
It was pretty drastic, yeah.
And I mean, if you haven't been there in a while, it's like
We
it is
still get
gigantic
we
now,
still get
right?
people come in. They're like, "There was a wall there, wasn't there?" Like that wasn't. They go around the corner like, "Wow,
Yeah,
that's a
so like
big
I'm
space."
curious about that. Like, have you? It seems like there's been a lot of emphasis put on the actual tap, like the room itself, to be able to come and actually have a
Mhm.
beer there with, live music and comedy nights and all this stuff going on. Has that been kind of an emphasis in the last few years? I guess COVID probably put a damper in some of
COVID kind
that,
of put a
but
damper on that pretty fast, but
okay.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
we opened it like a month before COVID hit, and at the
Wow.
time you're like, what have we done? Nobody can go out anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. But
Yeah.
then with social distancing, you're like, well, now we have space. Like
Yeah.
we would be in big trouble. We would have like room for two people maybe in the old tap room,
Yeah.
safely
Yeah.
distance apart. Now we can distance, be as safe as we can in the regulations of the time, and still have like 40 people in there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's that experience of getting the beer right at the brewery. I mean, beer is a very social drink, and it's meant to be, shared over friends, good times, food, music, entertainment, games, whatever the case is. So, I mean, I think we have probably the largest contiguous space for a tap room in the city. And it's kind of really, we're lucky to have that with having that we can host music or bingos or, have, a good sized group of people in there. And still, have a really good time kind of thing. 'Cause that's what people remember. That's what people brings people back is those memories or good times or, I went and saw band XYZ there.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that translates into when they're at the liquor store or somewhere else, the grocery store, that they're going, I'm going to pick up and I'll pick up a few drinks there too. So there are different requirements between the LCBO and licensees. But kind of those are our buckets of sales, the beer store and stuff like that we use and rely on. But the tap rooms, and I think specifically for breweries in the last 4 or 5 years, that's been the emphasis for local breweries is to control your destiny a little bit better by controlling it through providing that experience directly. I mean, I think for a brewer, this one of the scariest things is when beer leaves your brewery because you don't know how it's being stored. Are the lines clean? Are the glasses clean? Is it being kept cold? Is it old? How are they pushing it? All of these variables. If you miss any of those, will affect the quality of the beer. It's not the establishment who people are going to blame. They're going to say, "Oh, that Forked River beer tasted bad." It
Yeah.
have nothing to do with us. So we kind of control those variables or have the ability to in a tap room. So you
Yeah.
see that with a lot of breweries. It's all get people to come directly to the brewery.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think,
Yeah.
it's interesting because like I find if I have a beer even, on tap at the brewery or then in a can, there's always like a bit of like, oh, I think it, has a bit of a slightly, different feel. And I mean, I'm no beer connoisseur. I drink beer, but that's like, I'm not like an expert like yourself, obviously, on why that may be. But before I even really knew you, Dave, I was a huge fan of a beer you make, and I still am a huge fan of it, and it was called Capital Blonde. And
That is the
it was
OG. It's a good story
literally
behind that. So
like, okay, well, I want that story,
yeah.
but also like I would literally go and buy it just because I liked Capital Blonde because I just like blonde beer. Like it's just I know it's probably I'm not very tough. I'm not drinking the IPAs as
No, we
much, but
wanted
like
again with London being such a conservative market and craft beer being pretty new. We didn't come out with a big IPA or something out of the gates. We kind of joke it's a gateway craft beer,
it is.
to get people in, or they're like, well, I drink Keith's, okay, well then, you drink Keith's, whatever, but you can step into a Capital
Yeah.
Blonde and then you can try some other products based on that, but it's a bit of a hook.
Yeah.
The fun story before we opened, I'll try to keep this as short as I can. We knew we wanted to make a blonde ale kind of thing or something like that. So Steve, Andrew, and I guess at the time, there's a group of homebrewers. They still operate in Ottawa called the Members of the Barleyment, or the Mob,
I love it.
and they had a homebrew competition that Bose hosted, and they were just doing a couple categories. One was blonde ale. So we thought, okay, guys, let's, Steve, Andrew, and I probably over a few beers said, let's enter the competition. Each of us will go off and brew a beer to submit. And predominantly, this is all Ottawa homebrewers. There's not many people, a few in Toronto. I think Steve, Andrew, and I were the only ones in London who entered. And my recipe, which is something I'd been brewing for quite a while, won the competition, which kind of actually, I'm drinking water out of a Bose glass that I
Oh
won
yeah.
from winning
Yeah.
the competition. And I think Steve or Andrew came in second. So they had this competition all the way up there, and these two guys in London, wipe the floor and win it. So the blonde ale that we sell is basically that was from that winning recipe. So
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
I got
yeah,
like a hoodie and a couple shirts out of it, and we got a recipe that we've been making for 10 years.
it's kind of paid off, I guess, in that sense. Because
Yeah.
that beer, I mean, I just think that the beer, exactly what you said, it's a really good beer if you're just, someone that doesn't drink a lot of craft beer and then you want to get into it. But now it's my gateway. Now I'm drinking, IPAs and a bunch of
Yeah.
different crazy stuff. And,
I don't think
I
there's
saw that you had 3 different blondes the other day. And then now you have these, you've got into the pumpkin. I don't know, Dave, you've gone down the pumpkin.
no pumpkins were harmed in the making of those beers. It's pumpkin spice.
Oh, okay.
So they're
Okay.
spiced
Okay.
beers. I mean, honestly, I don't know many people who probably really like the flavor of pumpkin, but it's the spice you put in the pumpkin and all that you associate.
Absolutely, yeah.
We had Andrew. It's Andrew's doing, which I guess
Yeah.
it took 10 years. So
Yeah.
but to do like the lager, the porter, and the IPA in a pumpkin spice version. So
Yeah, Emily
limited
and I were
run. When it's gone, it's gone. So.
Yeah, Emily and I were in the other day, and Andrew came up and was talking to us about it. But Emily's she likes the pumpkin spice beers, so I was like, oh, you found the right person here to kind of try all these out for you. So that's
And
awesome.
I guess that's the thing. It's not what Andrew or I like for beer. I mean, hopefully people like those beers too. What are people going to buy?
Yeah.
So and certain beers have more limited markets or bigger markets than others. So
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been sitting at a bar at Forked River and thought, had people come up and had no idea what they were going to buy because they've never really drank craft beer before, and I've seen that happen probably like 5 times
all the time. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and it's cool to kind of see that because you'll have that. Oh, what do you normally drink? Right. Oh, I don't drink. Like I drink like
I
light.
drink Keiths. I like IPAs. No, you don't.
Yeah, you
you like
don't.
Keiths, that's fine. Try a blonde.
And I think that's a cool way to kind of introduce people to that. But then I think the other thing, and I'll plug Forked River because I do anyway, even when you're not on the show, Dave. But it's it is something that it's a cool atmosphere there, right? It's not a pretentious atmosphere where so you can go in and you can. Every time I go in there, I talk to somebody that I haven't really met before. If during at night, and it's cool to see that whole experience there.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is you've done a really good job of getting live music and events, and Emily will make fun of me all the time, but whenever I'm doing something, I like to have an activity. I'm like a small child in that sense, right? I like to kind of do something, and so you have a pool table that you put in. I think just for me personally, you put in you have all these awesome kind of things that you can do at your brewery while drinking beer.
The London Pinball League is there right now.
Yeah,
for the first tournament, and there's been making the breweries. I mean, historically they were the social hub of a community kind of thing. That's where people met. If you go to England, like I worked in England for a while. That's where people met. That's where people go. They go hang out at the fireplace or whatever in their local pub and have a beer. And I really enjoyed and love that atmosphere. That we can kind of translate that into a bit more sort of Canadiana kind of thing, but have that sort of network, neighborhood hub that people can just go. And it's like you said, it's casual. We had an NDP group in, and I think they called us aggressively blue collar. I'm like, that's interesting. I think I want to put that on a shirt at some point. Forked River, aggressively blue collar since 2013 or something.
I will be buying that shirt when you make it, please. Yeah, that's amazing.
But yeah, just a fun place to go out. And like with the Pinball League, since Call the Office shut down, there's been no venue in London that is hosting sanctioned events for the players to go keep their points up and get work on their ranking and get points. So there's, I don't know, I'd have to check, but hopefully there's like 20, 30 pinball players out there just having a place to go kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's cool. It's a partnership with London Pinball, a local one-man show kind of thing. He loves pinball. We had space. Let's make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's a cool way to think about it. Like if you can create something that's not a lot of additional work for you, but you can get a good space together, that's awesome, right? Because it kind of
people can have fun, and yeah.
I didn't even know there was rankings of pinball players, so there you go. I guess there should be, but
I really want to go. I was kind of like, I can't go tonight, but I got to go see one of these and just realize how bad I am at pinball.
Yeah.
When you see these guys who are like basically professional pinball players. Like,
Yeah.
it's
So
pretty neat.
yeah, not me. Yeah. So, okay. So we've talked. I'm going to do some rapid fire for you now, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple things I need to know, but I think the people of London, Ontario need to know as well. You are a amazing founder of a craft brewery. So I need to know what is your favorite, and you don't have to say favorite beer, but favorite like type of beer. I'm curious about that. If you want to start naming brands other than yourself, feel free, but you can also name your own brands too. That's fine too.
People ask me that, and to me, it's kind of such a loaded question. It's like it depends what I'm doing. Like if I am on a hot day or something, like an easy drinking lager, like a well-made, like good lager. I mean, they're dead simple beers. But that's kind of what you want, right? You're looking for something quenching that you can maybe, it's not 6 or 7%, so you can have three of them, kind of thing. It's 4.5 or 5%. So, if I'm eating, I kind of always probably will gravitate back to the hoppy IPAs and stuff, and that's been kind of interesting to see, kind of just where, even in the last five or so years, how IPAs have evolved, kind of thing. Excuse me, to having like the East Coast and the newer styles. So honestly, a good West Coast IPA is always, that kind
Yeah.
of goes, it's probably me sort of going back to my original homebrewing roots of those were the beers we made when there wasn't a brewery, kind of thing. These hoppy IPAs and stuff, and so yeah, it kind of depends. It's very very situational for me, but yeah, I mean a good IPA anytime, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, Coffee porter when I'm doing a podcast. So,
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like I don't know, there's like a Christmas thing where I'm like I feel like I should be drinking like a stout or something, but I'm still not a stout guy, so I'll
Yeah,
probably still drink
and it's
my
whatever you like. It doesn't matter. Like exactly, it
yeah.
doesn't matter what, as long as you enjoy it and it's a well-made beer, and
Yeah.
that's what counts, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
I kind of started with
there's a
like,
few
the
styles I don't like, but like
yeah.
I'm not a huge Goza fan or something. Once
Yeah,
in a
neither
while
am
it's
I.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I know other people like them, so whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very personal thing. So
Wow, such an unpretentious craft brewer over there, eh? Yeah.
no pumpkin beers though, nothing with pumpkin in it.
Emily's gonna be so sad. Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever. We caved. We did. I think in our first year, people were like, "Oh, you got to make a pumpkin beer. You got to make a pumpkin beer." I'm like, "Absolutely not." But we did a porter that we called Fork and Gourd, and it was basically just a spiced porter kind of thing. But it was all those pumpkin spices
Yeah.
that you associate with pumpkin beers and stuff. But there was no pumpkin in it. So
Well, I did. It was not you, Dave, but I did ask a local brewery person who brews in London, not Forked River, and I was asked, "Hey, why don't you make a blonde?" And he looked at me like I was like the most boring person in the history of the world, and I was like, "Come on, man! Like we can, it'd be a good way to kind of get in because I think." You guys have always made this blonde that I've always loved, right? And it's like, we could have a couple of options. So I appreciate you doing the three blondes the other day. I drank all three of them, and I appreciate that. So,
yeah.
Next question, Dave. So this is getting to be a controversial topic on the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast, and I always do preface this by saying it doesn't have to be your top three, but I do want three places that are in your say top 10 maybe of places that you like in London, Ontario. I don't care if they're restaurants or places you can drink beer at or not drink beer at. They could be stores, whatever the heck you want, Dave. What are your top three that you want to share with the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast listeners?
We're lucky in London with so many like parks and play, like just going out with, I have two young kids and stuff. Before this, we came back from going out for a walk, and there's so many great places just to go for a walk or hang out or nature. And, we're lucky we're not in kind of, I wouldn't want to be per se, but like in, urban Toronto kind of thing where you don't necessarily have as many choices like that. So just that we have all these places. My oldest daughter is like now obsessed with fishing. That's all she talks about is I want to go fishing. I want to go fishing. We have so many places around that you can just go. So that's kind of awesome that you can just go fish under a bridge.
Yeah.
Probably not catch anything, but whatever, they have fun.
Yeah.
We have lots of, like London's like the music was it the UNESCO Music Heritage? There's lots of places just to go see local, be it at a brewery or be it at the music hall or Centennial Hall or Bud Gardens too. Like we get a lot of really good acts in here that we're pretty fortunate that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I don't know if I can. I don't want to try to just name one place, but we have so many awesome places that are serving Forked River local craft beer that are family-owned neighborhood establishments that you can go to the bar and talk to the owner or somebody who's worked there for 10 years and just have an awesome experience. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're lucky. And each neighborhood is a bit unique. And the interesting thing too, like we have 10 breweries, craft breweries, all that. They all have a bit of a unique identity, like between like us and Anderson, Powerhouse, Storm State. We all kind of do a bit different niches, so they kind of all work together, kind of thing that way. That we're not, as much as we compete, we don't compete in a weird kind of way, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
It's interesting because you mentioned bungalow too, and it's funny because
it's a
I was
classic
asked.
example for me because
Yeah,
it's like
like
our
I
second
was.
account. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asked this question on another podcast, and one of mine was bungalow because I just find like the food is always
The
good.
food's great, the people are
And
great.
it's
And,
like
yeah.
exactly, and it's like it's my personality. Like I can't go to a place and feel like I need to not wear my Forked River t-shirt. I need to feel like I can do that there, but also get really good food that's a little, higher end actually in some ways, but then also have my amazing tap list that includes Forked River.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of mine.
Yeah, and there's other. I mean, there's like we've got lots of like the Vietnam, like
Oh, I love that
different.
place.
It's their best spring rolls, in my humble opinion, in the city.
Yeah.
And you've got, I mean, Milos, everything they do down there, like the curating and bringing. He's been bringing in amazing beer for like 20 years to the city
Yeah.
before, like he had to go out and get it. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of really cool things that way. Uh, you know, Pizza places. I mean, we've got a lot of people kind of get down on London a bit. I'm like, you got to step back, and there's a lot of good stuff happening here.
Yeah.
So
Well, someone called me out on some social media platform for being for London being boring, and I was doing a video about London and how I thought there's a really good potential from a real estate agent perspective and a housing perspective for London in the next say 5-10 years. And they said, and the comment was just London is boring, and I replied with, well, maybe maybe I like a little boring sometimes, right? I like a little like where I have all these cool places to go, but I can still go home and I'm not out till 4 in the morning at a club anymore because I don't
Yeah.
ever really do that. But
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
not me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of like, I mean, every city has their challenges, and I think you can't say London has all these issues. Like every city has issues.
Yeah.
And we all just need to try to figure out the best way to address them and make it as better as we can, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I will just plug our event, Dave, because I'm very excited for the event that we have on December 2nd. December 2nd from 1 to 4 p.m. Come to Forked River. Santa Claus will be there. I'm sponsoring this event like I did last year, so I will have some Phil Bailey Blonde ready to go for you. There'll be some food from Kyle's Fried Chicken and Barbecue, which is another previous podcast guest as well. We're also going to have a photographer there, professional photographer, to take photos with Santa and the family. We'll send them out later. You can use them for your Christmas card or put them on social media, of course, if you want to do that. And I'm going to have some door prizes. So I actually already talked to some folks that are going to donate some prizes this year. So we're going to ratchet this thing up even bigger.
Kick it
It's
up.
going to be bigger and better. And, 10 years from now, this is going to be like the craziest event ever. But right now it's pretty darn crazy. And I really hope that y'all can come. So, yeah, check that out on social
Is that
media for
December
me.
2nd,
And just,
or?
yeah, December. It is on December 2nd, Dave. Yeah. From 1 to 4 p.m. at Forked River Brewing. I think you may be familiar with it. So, yeah.
Familiar.
Yeah, you've been there a couple times. Yeah, me too. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast. Thanks so much to Dave Reed for joining us from Forked River. My name's Phil Bailey. I'm a real estate agent in London with the House Sigma team. You can text me if you have any real estate questions or, hey, any questions about future podcasts. My number is 226-977-2348. or go to my website, philbailey.ca. You can check out my reviews and learn a little bit more about me. Hope everyone has a great day. Thanks so much to Dave for joining us tonight. Take care. See ya.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for having me. Cheers.